Here we have a sort of a frightening story. I don't know if I told you the story. I'm sorry. I've told so many up to now. So if I did, so you'll hear this the second time. um, the Aptarov. Once there was a man that came into the Aptarov. Aptarov was the name of Heschel. Anyway, he was a great holy tzaddik, and he um, was sitting up late one night learning. Suddenly there was a knock on his door. A man came in and said, Rebbe, I was sent here. You have to help me. My wife is in labor, and the doctors don't know what to do. If they should make a cesarean, they're afraid that both she and the child will die. And she's very weak, and we don't know what to do. What should? So the Rebbe after said, how long has she been in labor? She's been in labor from hours and hours a day. I don't know, long time. So he put his head down, and he thought, and he thought, and he thought, and he put his head down for such a long time that the man that came in to ask the question didn't know, was the Rebbe asleep? What happened? So he lifted up and he said, Mazel Tov, you have a son. So he runs back to the hospital, and sure enough, his wife is very, very weak after all that labor, and there was a baby boy, had a baby boy. But it wasn't long afterwards that his mother succumbed to her weakness and she passed away. And after a couple of years, the father also, for some reason, he passed away. So the families of the father and the mother, they took the baby in and they raised him up. But he was a little bit problematic kid, and he got into trouble, and he wasn't so easy. So they passed him from one family to another until finally he just sort of ran away from home. Nobody really wanted him anyway. And somehow or other, the boys from the yeshiva, from this Rebbe of Aptar, the Aptar Rebbe, they saw him and they would put tefillin on him and give him something to eat, and they brought him into the yeshiva. And they taught him how to read Hebrew and to pray, and he was okay. And then he got drafted into the army. And they would write to him, and he would write back to them. And then he started complaining that they're beating him, that they're torturing him, and they want him to eat not kosher food, and they want him not to keep Shabbat, and he refuses, and they want him to pray in the church where they pray, and he says he refuses to do it. And they wrote letters back to him, telling him, encouraging him, etc. And this went on for, about a year, and more complaining. And then they stopped getting letters. They stopped getting letters for months. And so they wanted to find out what happened to him. Maybe they could go and visit him. Maybe they forbade him to write any letters. So they went to the army base where he was and to ask. And at first, they didn't. Nobody wanted to say. And then finally, a couple of the other soldiers, maybe Jewish soldiers, they said, well, he refused to defile the Shabbat, and he refused to eat not kosher food. And he got weaker and weaker, and they beat him because of his refusal. And eventually he died. I guess they beat him to death, or he started, whatever it was, and he died. And so they went back to the Rebbe, and they told him the tragic story. And the Rebbe said he knew that that's what was happening. He said that's the reason that he prayed. He said he saw in heaven that this soul was going to come into the world, and it was going to be put into this terrible test. And it would be, and it would suffer terribly, put into a terrible test. And that the whole reason the soul was supposed to come into the world was to stand in this test. It seems that in previous incarnations, he didn't stand. He was tested, and he didn't. Either he converted in the time of the Inquisition, or in the time of the Crusades, or whatever. Back then, anyway, this soul, because it was tested in his Judaism, and it didn't stand up, so it was brought into the world. And the soul realized this, and it refused. The soul didn't want to come into the world. That's why his mother had such problems in labor. And I prayed, my prayers was, I said, come into the world, I'll give you the power to withstand the tortures. to withstand the tortures. He was afraid he would come down and he would be again suffer for no reason. And we'd have to go back up again and do the same thing. So I prayed and I gave him energy, and that God should give him energy that he should withstand the tortures this time, and that should finish his purpose in the world. And that's why I prayed for so long, and that's the whole why he died in such a situation. Now, a person might ask, that doesn't seem to make much sense, this whole story. I mean, if God is good, so why do things like that? What's the purpose of Judaism? Just to die, Better to be with these other people, eat pork, go to church, and live. And so first of all, we don't understand exactly what it means that God gets pleasure. But there's a story, and it's told about the Beit Yosef. Beit Yosef, he wrote the book, which is called the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch is basically the basis of all Judaism. It defines what Judaism is. Without that book, and then you don't know what a Jew is and what Shabbos is and what to do. And all the enemies of Judaism always go against that book. That's the book that they hate, especially Christianity. They hate that book of the Shulchan Aruch. Can't go against it. Shulchan Aruch and Reform Judaism, conservatism. Forget the Shulchan Aruch. It's called the Shulchan Aruch, the set table. In other words, all the laws of Torah are all set. This a book that benefited all mankind. Well, it says there's a book which is called Magid Mishorim. There was an angel that used to come and talk to Beit Yosef. Beit Yosef was Rabbi Yosef Cairo. That wasn't it. There was an angel that used to come and speak to him. And the angel said, good news. You've been chosen. You're going to go to the land of Israel, and you're going to die on sanctifying God's name. And this is going to bring a tremendous relief to the whole world and blessing to all mankind and speed up the arrival of Mashiach. And he was very happy to do it. And after a certain amount of time, the angel came back to him and said, bad news, you've been disqualified. You didn't learn with the same constancy as you did before. He did something wrong. And so you get second prize. You don't get this is the gold medal, you get the silver medal. What's the second prize? You'll write the Shulchan Aruch. So it ended up that the Shulchan Aruch, as much as it benefited all Judaism and therefore all mankind, somehow or other, if he would have given his life for Judaism, for the truth, it would have benefited everybody even more. Does that make sense? To me, it doesn't make any sense, but it's true. It's true. So it comes to show that truth doesn't have to necessarily make sense. And what's good doesn't have to be understandable. And here we have a story that this Rebbe, the Rebbe, Apta Rebbe, actually gave power to the soul that it would come into the world and fulfill its purpose. Have a good day with Mashiach now. See you all tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning. Come on time. Anyone who does not come on time has to bring a note from his mother.
We'll have recess.
No recess for you. That's right. Anyone who does not come on time, no recess for you.
If I come late, I'll also wear a hat and jacket.
I'll show you who's boss over here.